Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. You know, lately I have been doing a series of videos about psychedelic folk music and underground folk of the late 60s, early 70s. But you know, I'm a record collector that collects many different types of music. So I thought that today I wanted to take a little break from the folk music and focus on something completely different. So today I'm gonna do a little video about Freakbeat. So, what is Freakbeat? Well, basically it's a subgenre to psychedelic music, and it's mainly about UK bands. In America they call this type of music more garage rock, but we have a different thing when it comes to UK. And this type of music sits right between the mod culture and the psychedelic culture. So we're talking about music from 1965 until 1967, roughly. So the mod scene in the UK were very influenced by American R&B and blues. But when the mod culture started to get influences by the emerging psychedelic culture that came in the mid-60s, some bands were doing more heavier music with more distorted guitars, or even started to experiment a little bit in the studio. But it wasn't really psychedelic music just yet. And that is the music that we call Freakbeat. However, there were a lot of kind of big bands that were doing this type of music in '66. And we're talking about like The Who, or Yardbirds, or Pretty Things, or Downliner Sect, or many of these bands were turning their mod music towards a more heavier sound. Back in the days, they didn't call this genre Freakbeat, of course. This is a term that was like coined by collectors in the 80s, when they started to do these compilations like Rubble and the Nuggets compilation, you know. They were labeling this music from the UK as Freakbeat, like early psychedelic or Freakbeat. And personally, I'm not a big collector of garage rock or beat music, but I am a big collector of psychedelic music. And always when I am going into a genre like psychedelic music, I tend to go backwards to see the origin of that genre, where it came from. And when you go back from the psychedelic music, you come to Freakbeat in the UK. So I have like cherry-picked a couple of records to my collection in this genre that I think are really great. And of course, at this time, it was mainly singles. So today I'm going to show some 7-inch singles. And it will be some classics in the genre, but it will also be some obscurities as usual. You know, I like to dig out some rare, obscure stuff as well. So this will be fun, and I will of course insert audio samples that I always do in my videos. So I'm going to show these singles in chronological order. So I'm going to start with the earliest one, and that is a single from 1965. And it's also a rarity. Why not? And this is a single by Miller called Baby I Got News for You. It was released on Columbia in 1965. Was released on these UK labels with the center intact here. Most of these singles I'm going to show came in company sleeves. And this was Hello. This was released on this Columbia with the wavy top and with the this back here. This single is considered to be one of the first psychedelic releases in the UK. It was already in 1965, but it doesn't really sound like it's from 1965. Most singles from 1965, when it comes to mod music, had a kind of clear and open production, but this recording has a much more dense production. The sound is heavier, and they use distorted guitars. But it's still like rooted in R&B, mod music or pop music, and it's a killer track. So this single was released by a guy called Miller. I think his real name was Peter Miller. And he was some kind of session musician or recording engineer. I haven't really got his full story. So if you know anything, put down in the comments. But what I know is that he released this absolutely killer single, Baby I Got News For You. And this one had been high on my want list for many, many, many years. But I just couldn't find a decent copy for a decent price. But a few years back I found it, and I was lucky to be able to buy it. And it's a really, really cool single, and it's one of the earliest examples of psychedelic music from the UK.
Baby, I've got news for you. I've gone bought new shoes for you. They just look such a pretty blue. I had to bring them straight to you. And I don't care if I do the right thing by you.
The next single is a Freakbeat classic by a band called The Favorite Sons. And it was released on Mercury in May 1966. And on the A side here, we have a song called That Driving Beat. That is like a more standard R&B track. But on the B side is where we find the Freakbeat song called Walkin, Walkin, Walkin. It was released on Mercury, on these beautiful labels, with the center intact here. This is pretty much a mint copy. The story goes that when I bought this single, the seller told me that he got it from an old lady who had got this single for free when she bought a hi-fi stereo system back in the 60s. So it was given to her for free and she just put it away. And many, many years later he got it, and then I could buy it from him. On this single, they were starting to move into more psychedelic music. They used an echo on the vocals, and they also used these distorted, more heavier guitars. And they also used these like pitched up vocals a little bit. You know, they were in the 60s, they were playing around with vari-speed on the tape machines, so they could like pitch down the recording and then add vocals and then pitch it back up, so they had a slightly higher pitch. And that is typical for psychedelic music. And they used that in this single together with this hypnotic echo that sounds pretty weird and pretty much like a Freakbeat song. They just released this one single and then they disappeared. And it's a pretty sought after single by collectors, both collectors of Freakbeat that want the B-side and collectors of more like R&B mod music that wants the A-side. This was released in this Mercury company sleeves. Just the same on the back, but upside down. Hello. I always love to find the original company sleeves that the singles came in. Over the years, many singles from the 60s had changed the company sleeves, so sometimes they have a Mercury sleeve from the 70s or from a different time period, or in just plain white sleeves or whatever. But I like to be sure that I have the right type of company sleeve. And that is also what it's so fun about collecting these singles. They are hard to find in good condition. Often the middle here is knocked out. So to find them in good condition with the center intact and with the right company sleeve, that is what gets me going when I'm collecting these type of singles. The next single is one of the most iconic Freakbeat singles by one of the more famous bands in this lot. And I'm talking about The Creation with their absolutely fabulous two-sider Painter Man and Biff Bang Pow on the B-side. The A-side here, Painter Man, it perfectly captured this like mod pop art thing together with some raw energy and music that was turning into psychedelic but wasn't really psychedelic at the time. And the guitar player here, he was, I think he was the first one to play the electric guitar with a violin bow, at least in a rock band. So they, of course, looked spectacular when he played his like distorted guitar with a violin bow. A couple of years before Jimmy Page were doing the same. And the B-side, Biff Bang Pow, is an absolutely killer, like mod rocker freakbeat song that is really great. And it was released on this pretty obscure label Planet, still with the center intact here. This one is actually pretty hard to find a decent company sleeve, and mine is not in the best condition, but this is the original Planet company sleeve. That is really cool to have. I would like to upgrade. So if you have a clean original, you can send it my way if you want to. I mean, Creation and this single in particular were really important to the revival of this type of music in the 80s. I mean, Creation Records took their name from the band Creation, and also the band Biff Bang Pow took their name from the B-side of this single. So they were hugely important for the whole 80s revival of this neo-psych mod music that was played by television personalities and early Creation bands, and a killer two-sider that fits right in this freakbeat category.
I wanna see your face everywhere I go. You gotta be at the places I know. What's happening right now? Big bang pow, I can't get rid of you. No matter how I try, you're always around me like a 005. Happening right now. Big bang pow.
Many of these freakbeat bands, they really turned up the volume and they turned up their fuzz guitars. And one band that really turned it up to the max is actually a band from Iceland that was called Thor's Hammer. And they released this like double 7-inch EP single called Umbarumbamba that was released in 1966. And it came in this like gatefold 7-inch single sleeve. There you have the band on the back. So this is a double 7-inch single with one single and one EP tucked together in this package. And I think the single was released as a standalone single, but the EP is only available on this like double set. The single were released in these labels, If You Knew, and the EP were released on these labels. And it's especially this EP that I really love. And the first song on the EP, called My Life, is one of those like where they turn up the fuzz guitar to 11 and they play like they are on amphetamine, and it's just speeding fast, and it's just a killer beat song that is one of the coolest freakbeat songs that I have in my collection. And there are more great tracks on this EP, but that track is a standout track for me. They were from Iceland, but they recorded their singles in the UK and they were released in the UK. So I guess they are part of this freakbeat scene. And this EP was like the music from a film or something. I guess these images here are from that film. I'm not really sure what that film is about or anything, but it's a really cool double set, and it's one that is really hard to find. And I got my copy in a trade again from my good friend Stefan Dimle. He has provided me with some cool records over the years. And we did a trade. I gave away a bunch of prog albums that I didn't really care about, and I got this like smashing freakbeat double set.
Well, there is something I've got to tell you. One thing that's about
You know I like to be accurate with my company sleeves, and the single came in this particular Parlophone sleeve with this Fran Fan advertising on the back. And actually, I don't know when this was released, but I can tell you that when I look at this back, that this type of company sleeve was used in the late 1966. And that is really cool with this company sleeve, because they often used one particular company sleeve for a couple of months, especially Parlophone, who did like this advertising on the back of them. Then they changed the design. So you can like pinpoint down the release dates by just looking at these company sleeves. So I should also mention a book that I have, the UK 45 RPM sleeves, a collector's guide to 7-inch record company sleeves. And this book is like amazing to just see different type of company sleeves when they were used. So I can look up Parlophone here. So here are the Parlophone releases. And as you can see, we have the Fran Fan advertising backs. So I can read that was used between August 66 and late 66, early 67. So that's a really great, cool book to have. And a book that shows how nerdy I am about record collecting. The next single is probably the most famous song in this batch of singles, but it's an absolutely classic when it's come to freakbeat and psychedelic music. And I'm talking about My Friend Jack by the UK band The Smoke. And I have the solid center My Friend Jack on Columbia. And this time it was released in this red Columbia company sleeves and with a different type of advertising here on the back. So this was released in February 1967, and at this point the lines between mod beat music and psych music were starting to blur out. So this single has like 1 foot in the psychedelic scene and 1 foot in the freakbeat scene, but it definitely could still be considered to be a freakbeat single. This has this really heavily tremoloed guitar, and they were singing about My Friend Jack eats sugar lumps. Of course, they are referencing LSD here, and this single was banned by BBC in the UK. I think it went into the charts anyway, this single, and became really popular within the whole emerging psychedelic scene that was happening. And I mean, this is a stone cold classic. You have probably heard it, and you have heard cover versions of it, all the way from like Baccarat disco covers, and many bands has done this. But it's still a killer single, and yeah, I love this, My Friend Jack. Such a great track.
My friend Jack eats sugar lump. My friend Jack eats sugar lump. Sugar man hasn't got a care. He's been traveling everywhere. Been on a voyage.
The last single I'm gonna show is from May 1967, and it's by the UK band John's Children, with this single Desdemona on the A side and Remember Thomas A. Becket on the B side. And what I have here is a German pressing that came in this picture cover, and it was released on Polydor on these labels. In the UK they were released on Track, but sometimes it's really cool to find these singles from different European countries with these picture sleeves, so not just the company sleeves. John's Children, they were like a UK mod band that were signed by the manager Simon Napier Bell, that had been managed Yardbirds before this, and he wanted another band to work with. So he found John's Children, and he thought that they looked really, really cool on stage. They looked like real mods, all dressed in white. Probably like a band like The Hives were really influenced by the look of these guys. But the problem was that they really couldn't play or sing or write songs. They were kind of a lousy band. So they released a couple of singles, and they even recorded one of the most bizarre LPs in the rock history, where they basically played some of their songs, and then the producer, Simon Napier Bell, he added live audience on top of it that he took from a Hard Day's Night movie. For some reason, he has gotten the tapes from the Hard Day's Night with all the girls screaming, you know, from the Beatles film. So he added it on top of that record, and it sounds like they're playing and the girls are just screaming in front. It's a truly bizarre record. It was also titled Orgasm when it was supposed to be released. So actually it didn't come out. It wasn't until 1970 it got released on White Whale, and it's a cult classic, but it's not really a good LP. However, after that LP, they brought in a young Mark Bolan to help them write songs. We have Mark Bolan right here, looking like a mod. And as we all know, Mark Bolan is a great songwriter. So he could really give them some new energy and some new songs. And they recorded this song called Desdemona. That is one of the finest songs. Really cool, like freakbeat rocker with, you can hear Mark Bolan singing backing vocals in the chorus. And this single was also banned by the BBC because of the lyrics, "Lift up your skirt and fly." I mean, that was kind of dangerous in 1967, I guess. But anyway, it's a super cool single, and it's really cool to hear Mark Bolan before he became this psychedelic folk artist with Tyrannosaurus Rex, and way before he became this glam rock megastar. So a really cool single from John's Children.
He does not understand just how to move or rock and roll to the conventions of the young. Desdemona, 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 lift up your skirt and fly.
So that was kind of a breath of fresh air, going away from all my folk videos that I've been doing to dig into some raw energy from the mid-60s with these freakbeat singles. And you know, this is not the genre that I collect everything from. I have just cherry-picked a few things that I really love. There are of course many more that I would like to have, but many of these singles are really expensive and they are really hard to find. So I have to wait for the right opportunity and for the right copy and so. And I'm not like actively searching out these rare freakbeat singles. But when I stumble upon them and it's something that I really like, I go for it. Since this is not my typical genre with freakbeat, I would like you to put down a comment and recommend freakbeat tracks that you think that I should check out. Just hit me up and I will try to listen to everything, and I always respond to every comment that I got. So I hope you have liked this, and I hope it has inspired you to go after some old 7-inch singles. I just love these small records, and they are a great complement to the LPs, especially since singles that I have shown are non-album tracks that only came out on singles back in the days, and later on they have been released on compilations and stuff, so you can get them and you can access them easy there. But I like to go after the original ones from back in the days. So anyway, thanks for staying all the way to the end, and I hope you're all well out there, and take care and peace.